Okay, well, I've got 6:03 and we have a quorum, so why don't we get started? I assume everyone got the minutes of our previous meeting, and let's open the floor for any corrections to that.
I make a motion. This is Cliff. I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I believe that is then approved. Now, we can move on to the next item, which is the emergency assistance possibilities. And Jennifer has agreed to come here and explain all this to us, and also her information and learning experience with administering the Newton program. So I'd like to just turn this over to Jennifer and let her tell us about it. You have a memo as well concerning the monies that are available for it.
Sure.
Okay, Jen.
Thank you, Fred. Great. Well, so we back in, I think, March, when this was all starting to hit us, realized that one way we could contribute to the reduction of human suffering was to put together a set of program guidelines and a little bit of infrastructure around an emergency rental assistance program. So the guidelines that we crafted were really somewhat designed quickly in a way to get them out to a lot of municipalities all at once, and for them to consider either running their own program, kind of taking our guidelines and tweaking them, making them perhaps more appropriate to their marketplace, and administering it themselves, or participating in a program that we could administer on their behalf. So it has been a frantic whirlwind time. We've worked with a lot of municipalities. Well, a lot. I probably shouldn't exaggerate too much. I think we've probably worked with about 12. And right now it's about 50-50, I would say. About 50% of the 12 are choosing to run the program themselves in-house with their own CPA money and with their own municipal staff or their municipal housing trust as the program administrators. And then the other 50%, we're working with them in some capacity to administer their funds. So the general concept is that emergency assistance would be available to households who meet certain income thresholds, and it could be 80% of AMI, 65%, 50, 30. I mean, the municipality really can pick the magic number. We proposed 80 just as a way to kind of capture the most potential households, but there's a case to be made to target lower income households, I think, as well. We've been proposing that the assistance be based on bedroom size, just to keep it really, really simple. So what that means, though, is, of course, some households may be more rent burdened than others. So let's say Fred and Helen both have a 2-bedroom apartment, but Helen makes twice as much money as Fred. we would still only provide both households $950 or $1,000 because they're both in 2-bedroom households. The reason we propose that type of situation is just that determining income for households is actually hard to do even under normal circumstances. And it's even harder when people, so for example, in the Newton program, we've got people who are wait staff. Well, so some weeks they work, some weeks they don't, some weeks they collect unemployment, some weeks they don't. So it's, you know, we have to kind of pick a number that we think is clear enough to make them income eligible. But it would be very, very difficult to say this household needs this much rent assistance based on their income, because incomes are very hard to determine right now. There are other ways to kind of slice that up, but it's one kind of simple, clear, transparent way to award funds. So really then the two, besides income, the only other two eligibility, actually only one really other eligibility suggestion we make is that the household be able to show that they have reduced income because of COVID-19. So for a lot of people, that just means showing us the unemployment letter that they got from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. For some, though, it means they have to get a letter from an employer. For some, it's actually hard. So let's, for example, if you worked at a summer camp last summer and your plan was to work at a summer camp this summer, it might be hard for that employer to prove that you are laid off from the summer camp. So some of these situations are pretty complicated and actually hard to prove, but we try really hard to work with the applicants to document sort of whatever we can to evidence that. So it's an important point because low-income people writ large are not necessarily eligible for this program. So if you just happen to be a low-wage worker, but you've kept your job throughout this, you wouldn't be eligible. If you're disabled and you're collecting Social Security income and that's your only source of income, you would not be eligible, et cetera. And then actually that's really maybe about it in terms of what we kind of feel strongly about. One that we feel a little less strongly about now than we did 2 or 3 months ago was we had recommended that the program not be open to people receiving other public subsidies, like if they were a tenant in a housing authority unit. They might not be eligible for this program. We have since kind of rethought that a little bit. I think there's a case to be made either direction. So for example, the city of Newton did ultimately decide to allow tenants in public housing, to allow tenants receiving Section 8 or other public assistance to apply for the program. Because their rationale is that those households are really already struggling a lot and have a lot of increased expenses right now. So that was the decision they made. A lot of other towns are not. They're continuing to exclude public housing tenants, Section 8 tenants, other publicly assisted housing folks. So last but not least, the strong recommendation right now, at least from the Mass Housing Partnership, who has kind of spearheaded a lot of the work around this, is recommending that the programs be considered temporary and emergency only. So 3 months of assistance is the recommended number. My guess is that some communities will be reconsidering that or revisiting it as the 3 months elapse and people are still desperately broke and the federal unemployment benefits run out. So, but that's kind of to be determined. I'm going to pause there. I've said a lot.
Fred, can I just ask a clarifying question? Fred?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, I was just going to ask a question to Jen. So
Yeah,
when
sure.
you're talking about the bedroom size, do you have a particular schedule for that? The 3, 2, 1, do you have numbers attached to those?
You know, we just threw out there $750 for a 1-bed,
Right.
$950 for a 2-bed,
Right.
and $1150 for a 3.
Uh-huh.
In some kind of loose way, that's about half. You know, if you kind of think about what market rents are, this is kind of half of the rent.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that our experience in Newton, what we've learned is that the households applying are extremely low income. So half a month's rent helps them, but a full month's rent would help them a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, these numbers, I think, are not magic numbers. There's no super rhyme or reason to it. They could be higher, they could be lower. In Hudson, the town of Hudson, they're actually just doing $500 for every household that applies, regardless of income, regardless of bedroom count. And their rationale is they want to serve as many households as they can. So I think there are a lot of different ways that this could be approached, and they're all compelling.
Jen, what has been your experience in terms of uptake? Like, are people knocking down the doors, applying, or is it more moderate? Just since we're, you know, a few months into this, I'm fascinated to hear what the experience has been in reality for the towns that have this up and running.
Yeah, so I haven't, you know, our initial conversations were with Cambridge and Boston, where obviously those are big populations. They actually closed their programs after 1,000 applications because they just couldn't kind of handle the volume beyond that. Newton's received 240 applications. They probably could fund, though, about 300. So they are not oversubscribed. And a lot of the other towns that we're working with haven't launched yet. So I don't know. Waltham has, and I should find out what their experience is, because that might be kind of comparable to Watertown. I don't know.
Actually, my understanding is that's a program administered by the mayor, and they're not limiting it to 80% AMI. It's just apply and they determine you do or do not need it. So that's about all I know.
Yeah, I just meant in terms of interest in the program. There might be some useful information there. I do, you know, the federal the federal unemployment assistance is supposed to stop July 25th. The governor's moratorium ends shortly thereafter. So I suspect there will be an uptick in interest after that, for sure.
Jen, what kind of marketing have you done, and who's kind of in charge of that when you work with a community?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do rely heavily on the local people to do outreach because so much of it now is electronic, right? So it's about what email lists do you have? What, Facebook pages are you on? I mean, we do have a list and we can certainly notify folks through some of our lists, but a lot of our lists are paper, they're mailing addresses to businesses and nonprofits. And a lot of those folks aren't going to get that paper in a timely fashion. So we've really relied on the town websites, to have it on their COVID-19 resource lists. The public school system in Newton has been hugely helpful because they know, where the minority communities are, and they, have experience reaching out to them. So that's been a real help. And then of course, just nonprofit agencies trying to get them to reach out to their constituents.
Cliff, I had a question about including or excluding Section 8 Housing Authority tenants. I would a little unclear why you want to include them. My understanding is that they can have their rents adjusted if they have a loss of income. Is that taken into consideration here?
Yeah, that is absolutely the rationale for not including them, right? That they should be, so if their income goes down to zero, they should be able to go to their housing authority and pay zero rent.
Yeah.
And in those, in cases where it's zero, I think that's a little more clear cut. The city of Newton was moved by the Newton Housing Authority executive director who, as I said earlier, basically just said, look, my tenants are like barely making it on a good day. And this is really a bad day. Households, trying to survive on $18,000 a year, whose kids used to get a lot of their meals and a lot of their structure and a lot of their support in the public school system, who have now had a lot of that taken away. She just felt like, what, if the program in Newton can help relieve public housing tenants of even a modest rent burden, $200, $300, then it helps that family a lot, was her argument. And the city leadership agreed with her. It was not a case I made, but I don't disagree with it.
That leads to my next question, which is, are any of the communities taking any steps to ensure that funds are being used for housing costs and not other costs?
Can you say that again, Cliff?
I'm sorry, my connection is not very good. Are any of the other communities taking steps to ensure that the funds are used for housing and not for other costs?
Yeah, the checks are paid to the landlord.
They are, okay.
Yeah.
So in a case like Newton, where tenants may have rents of $200 to $300 in public housing, would the landlord get a check of $200 to $300 every month for, say, 3 months until the funds are used up? Is that how it would work?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
I could just chime in for a minute. I had some past experience with Section 8 tenants as a landlord, and it's not uncommon that the Section 8 tenant doesn't pay their part, but at least in my case, the tenants didn't get evicted for that. I mean, you're not going to evict the tenant if you're getting paid something. So, given the fact that we don't have a lot of money to dole out as Newton does, my recommendation certainly would be that we not fund individual households that have some sort of assistance already. And at least initially, until we see what kind of response we have. We don't want to run out of the small amount of money that we do have. We're not going to help anybody if we do that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, yeah, I'm certainly sympathetic to the argument that the Newton Housing Director made, and I'm sure it's true. But again, given the limited funds, seems like that really can't be our priority.
While we're go ahead, Cliff.
Right, I guess just wanted to ask, in the memo that we got from Laura, it indicates that CPA funds aren't ready for disbursement in Watertown. Is that because the committee is still working on their process, or because the funds haven't been collected? I'm not really sure we are in the cycle at this stage.
Someone want to handle that?
Well, Elodia is on the call. She wants to. If not, I just think we haven't gone through the process. We have to do a plan process before we can allocate funds.
I can speak to that really briefly. We're at the beginning of the process as far as the planning that's required for the first stage of the Community Preservation Act requirements. So once the plan is adopted, then there's the goals and guidelines that they can use to then make recommendations for projects. And of course, someone would have to apply to them, and then it would go through their process and then be recommended to go to the council. So they're not at the place where they're disbursing funds yet, but there are funds in an account at this time.
So if we spend down the amount of money that is here, we could then in the future apply to replenish the funds that we had.
Right, and it would have to be in keeping with the approved plan that the Community Preservation Committee is working on at this time and is hoping to, wrap up through the summer and fall.
I want to clarify something that Fred just said. Is it true that we could spend money and then apply to replenish those funds from CPA, or we could just apply for more funds to do the same, to extend the program?
The word replenish is incorrect.
Can I ask, so, ordinarily, of course, it would be, prudent for our CPC and any other town to establish a process and, guidelines for submission and evaluation of applications for funds. But we're not in ordinary times. So like every other organization and local and state government, everything, is not, these are not normal times, and people are doing things differently and relaxing regulations, as well as, changing, adapting processes to the times that we are in. So ordinarily, I would certainly, I'm just saying, be supportive of obviously having a good process for our CPC committee and funds and evaluation, but these are not ordinary times. So I would, maybe consider making a request to the committee.
It's not allowed at this time. That's
statutorily.
They have to adopt this plan, which is the first plan that's ever been adopted. So they're at the beginning of the process.
You mean statutorily, you're saying?
Yeah. So there's a process for them in order, and that has not been completed. So it's not something that's been exempted, and it's not designed as a fund for emergency housing. It's one option that you can use for those funds, but that's not where we're at right now in this.
No, I know you're not there, and I haven't looked at the statute, and so I couldn't speak to that. But I would just say, if there was an opportunity to propose something, for them to consider it, they could vote it down and say, look, we'd like to get a process. But if they're statutorily tied to not be able to do it, that may be the case, and maybe there isn't relief or exemption from the state to be able to do something. But you know, if there was a way to consider it, I think they, you know, we should put it before them to possibly consider it and let them vote it down, unless there's just not that. Yeah.
Well, there's no process in place to make a request because it has not been developed at this time, and it's a two-step process. They have to make a recommendation, and then the council has to vote and approve it. So It's not there's checks and balances there, and it's not built into the system yet. So it really is premature, but an entity could try to, you know, make a request to them, but you would have to have an entity that actually has a program, and they would be the one that be requesting it. But there's no mechanism at this time because they do not have any, you know, guidance documents to use to make a decision.
I think we understand it's not possible. If we had truly a housing trust fund that was fed from that, then we would, if we had established that, we would be in good shape right now. I think the issues that are in front of us is a vote on exactly who we're funding, whether it's the program that Newton has put in place, which is probably the simplest thing to do, and excluding those getting the public assistance. And then the next question is how much funding to commit. 100,000 would give us 33 awards at the 2-bedroom size. And that seems consistent with Newton's numbers, if I heard this right, Jen.
How much money is Newton appropriated?
2.5 million.
How much?
Right, but how many people applied? How many awards were made so far?
So they awarded 2.5 million and are expecting to serve about 300 households.
300 households. Yeah.
Sorry, that was very garbled. I didn't really understand it. How much money is Newton appropriated and how many households do you think have applied?
Appropriated 2.5 million. We're expecting that to fund about 300 households, and we have 240 applications currently.
Okay.
And Jen, did they use, what was the source of their funding?
2 million in CPA and 500,000 in CDBG COVID CARES funds.
Okay, so not home. They did not use home funds.
Not home.
Too restrictive. Fred?
The only thing we can do is decide on a number, and when the money's gone, we can reassess it. But we're certainly in no position to put $1 million in the kitty. So that's really the question: what level of funding do we commit? And do we commit to a 2-bedroom unit having $3,000, essentially 3 $1,000 awards? I think those are the questions. Yeah, any ideas?
Excuse me, is Tony trying to say? I think he's been raising his hand. I'm curious to hear what he has to say.
No, I just, if I could, there's just 2 questions. One to Jen about how the other communities are funding it. I know you said you're about 12 communities. Newton's the biggest, sounds like Newton's the biggest, but I'd like to know where the other ones, if you have a rough idea of the breakdown of their funds, it would be helpful.
Every town that we are talking to, it's CPA funds.
All by itself, just CPA funds?
Yes. And
what's the sort of the next highest, 2.5 is a lot of money. What's the?
Sure is, yeah. Next in line is Belmont with 250,000.
And does it go down after it?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of communities are like around 100,000, 80,000, 75. So clearly, you know, we're with a lot of these are small towns, Marion, Canton, Easton, you know, they're small communities. They're not, you know, Littleton, Stowe, you know, they're thinking they'll have 10 to 20 applicants.
Right.
But those are all communities that also have a much smaller rental housing market than Watertown.
Yeah, right. We have a pretty, right.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I certainly agree with Fred that there's no harm in starting with a small-ish number and seeing how it goes. And if there's tremendous demand, then we try to find more money.
I did want to say that I have been speaking to some other people in preparation for the committee's meeting, the Committee on Human Service for next Monday. And I've heard figures, I have to verify this, but at least right now, 30 families, depending whether they're single, couples, or with children, I have been are approaching the social workers, social service resource specialists, and that's without any publicity or any work in terms of getting a word out. So that was just through their mechanism, which is so that gives you a small sense of what might happen if we start to publicize it.
Yeah, I did look up Watertown's unemployment rate for April 2020. Those numbers have come out recently, and it's 11.9%, which is not as high as a lot of communities. I mean, there are places in the state that are, you know, have 25, 30% unemployment, but it is 2,399 individuals. So it's hard to know how many households that is, but it could be north of 2,000 households because, well, it's hard to know if you have multiple unemployed individuals in a single household, but that's a lot of people who might not be able to pay their rent. So.
Right. It's getting back to Laura. I have a question for Laura, just in your memo. So it sounds like Jen was proposing or suggesting the, you know, the bedroom schedule for assistance, you know, based on bedroom size. Is your memo proposing a different approach for assistance, or because, or?
I mean, no, I don't know what the right formula is, and I think Jen has a lot more experience at that than me, and I would go with, I would just go with what's the standard. I don't know. I don't have it.
Because you had said about the $1,000 up for, you know, per month for 3 months. Was that just sort of a generic kind of a?
No, that was from Jen's program.
That's Metro West.
Isn't that your program, Jen? Jen is 3 times 1,000.
Well, that, yeah, so it's important maybe to just say we don't have a program exactly. Okay. We're working with 6 different towns. They all have slightly different program guidelines. So as I said, in Hudson, they're only doing $500 per unit per household regardless. In Newton, it's upwards of $2,500 per month. So it's pretty all over the map.
Yeah. So I took it from an earlier set of guidelines that you had put together.
Yeah.
I don't know what, you know, I don't know what the right number is. I mean, I don't think we can give $2,500 a month if we're only going to put out that 100,000.
Well, that's just, I was just using 100,000 as a number. I mean, it could be twice that, it could be whatever. The money that we have is, we've kind of considered, at least in my opinion, that that's emergency money. And it seems to me that this is an emergency. We don't want to have people homeless because then it's just a bigger problem to solve. So we could spend the money we have. The real question is if we start getting applications in the numbers that are 1,000, then we should be going with a small amount of money per household. I don't know if that would even help. If you give somebody $500 and their rent's $1,900 or something, I don't know that $500 is going to make anybody happy.
Although,
Well,
I mean, I don't know. I guess the other question is if you say for Jen's prior thing about, you know, kind of roughly targeting half, the other question is if, you know, if you're a landlord and your current tenant can give you half, as opposed to nothing, as you know, are you going to actually evict them at this point and try to release your unit, or are you going to, you know, take the half, make a payment plan, something? I mean, it seems like if it's maybe less than half, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I kind of like the idea of half because, I mean, there may or may not be other resources in the family to make it up, but I also feel like at some point, you know, there's likely to be more shared pain with the tenant and the landlord if it's kind of a reasonable chunk of money, even if it's not the full amount.
With 1,000 for a 2-bedroom, wouldn't that be about half? I assume that rent would be about 1,900.
Yep, I think that, you know, I mean, in our program guidelines, we said 950 for a 2-bedroom, but 1,000 is.
So 950 is fine. That's a fine number as far as I'm concerned. I don't know.
I'm just doing a little bit of here. If Jen's organization were to administer this and they're charging $450 per unit that they assist for their administrative fee. If we were to say $1,000 a month for 3 months plus $450, that's $3,450, and divide that into 100,000, we come up with roughly 29 households that we could assist, which seems like very few.
Right.
I'm wondering if we should think more about 150,000. That might get us up to a little bit more reasonable number.
Well, we can start with an amount of money and then go back and ask for more. I mean, 150,000 might not even be enough. We could start at 200,000 and say limit it up to 200,000. And Jen has to give us some feedback, hopefully, that, hey, we're running out of money very quickly, or very few people have applied, one or the other. We have no information yet.
May I ask a question? I'm sorry, David.
No, go ahead, Tony.
I was looking at the memo from Laura in terms of the sources of money, and I was, when I went and heard that webinar that MPH did a while back, they said that home funds are a little more restrictive and a little harder to get the money out to people because of the restrictions. But so I went down to look at her alternative funding on the second paragraph. Is the $269,000 there general affordable housing revenue? Is that what is available from the partnership? Is that available money? And then there was the additional CDBG program income, which is actually new to me. I didn't know we had CDBG money as a town. But that totals $657,000. So not saying you need to use it all. I'm just trying to get whether these figures here, how strong those figures are.
I think that they're correct in terms of, Steve got them for me from the auditor, Tom Tracy's. They're current. The program income, I think, is probably been there a long time from when we had CDBG money.
Okay.
And paybacks for loans for the rehab program.
Uh-huh.
And the other one, the program income is sometimes in the old days, we used to let developers buy out of the inclusionary zoning. So it's that kind of money.
It's the payment in lieu.
Payment in lieu of the affordable housing.
And the other money is not CDBG. It was matching funds dedicated to a program. And then when the program expired and then eventually we got that money returned to us, it's been sitting in an account.
There were CDBG, yeah. It was for the rehab program. And then when the repayments came back, they started, that's what it tallied up to.
Right.
If I could revisit, circle back around one more time to the CPC situation. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but and with all due respect, Gideon and if Elodie is on the call, but you know, I'm just not certain. I don't know if we can get something from the town attorney if necessary, but it might be possible to procedurally comply with, you know, with the CPC statute and regulations. And I think even without having, you know, developed a general process for submission and evaluation, and I'm just saying, if that is a possibility, I think, you know, we should look to that as a, you know, as an avenue. Maybe we could seed it with a certain amount, but I do think that it's worth pursuing, unless it's clear, absolutely clear that it's just not possible to use as a source of funds until that process has been, you know, adopted by the CPC and, you know, voted on and adopted. But I'm not sure that that it's not impossible. But if you know otherwise, you know, but I think it's worth taking a look at to see if that's a possibility. And also, secondly, in the alternative, I don't know what the, you know, they may not have a timetable for when that might be able to happen on its own, you know, adopting a process, but the town could submit a proposal, you know, perhaps.
So that would be late fall would be the earliest that the process would probably be wrapped up.
Right.
I guess for me, I'm not sure why you're focused on that when you have this fund that you can look at using now, and then that's some opportunity in the future, and you can have this conversation. So I guess.
Well, let me just say that. Sorry, Gideon. All buckets of money have, you know, different things attached to them and different purposes and different administrative considerations, and so, you know, it's not that all, you know, all the buckets are equivalent necessarily.
Okay, so I think that's an agenda item for the future for sure. We need to find out and try as soon as it's possible to try to get some money for this purpose from the CPG. Right now, we have some money. We could certainly, we have 269 in the general housing revenue. I don't know of any reason why that can't just be spent, other than the fact that we don't want to empty it all out, but it's available money that's not tied up with strings. The home funds money is impossible to use unless somebody likes to fill out a lot of paperwork and do all these things. I'm not hearing a motion from anybody that's saying they're going to do that. So why don't we go ahead and come up maybe first with a number? What number should we commit if we're going to go with the program as it was described here, which is, I think, $750 for 1 bedroom and $950 at 2 bedrooms. And there was a 3-bedroom number. 100,000 doesn't do many awards, that's for sure.
Hey, Fred.
Yeah, Tori, go ahead.
Tori's trying to be recognized, Fred.
Hey, thanks, everybody. I'd like to make a proposal that we allocate $250,000 from the general affordable housing revenue on the schedule that Jen's laid out.
Okay, that's a motion. Do we have a second or discussion?
I think it needs to be seconded before discussion. I'll second it just for discussion purposes.
Okay. Do we have this? Do we have the approval of it?
I don't think I'm ready to allocate the 250 until I had a better sense about the CPC funds.
Good.
I mean, I don't know.
Why
it's the
is
same
it
money in the end?
CPC?
You know, it's the same money in the end because you're taking money to develop affordable housing to use for emergency funds. The CPC money is also for affordable housing.
Right, and there are two different processes and two different things. So there may be other affordable housing projects or development or that we might want to support. And we can't, you know, the CPC has its own process for it, and own timeline, and we have ours. And so, you know, I'm saying, so they're not, it's putting all the sort of eggs in a particular basket. I'm not sure that.
Any other comments, ideas?
I mean, I don't know if 250 is the right number. I was in my head thinking more like 200, but I also think that, you know, in response to David's comments on the CPC, I mean, we've already discussed at length in the past how, you know, our current budget doesn't really let, you know, the amount of money we currently have, the bank doesn't really let us do anything. And, you know, because it's not big enough to fund a new development. We talked about kind of the open-ended nature of a more general tenant-based rental assistance. And this is a more, you know, closed-end emergency thing that seems like it can have a bigger impact at an important time. It's hard for me to think that the difference between, you know, $50,000 from the affordable housing account we have on hand is going to make much of a difference, you know, a year from now, if we have a development project, you know, that needs $1 million or something. I mean, I don't know. You know, I don't just want to spend the money because we have it, but it also seems like this is, you know, exactly something that we can do, and we're fairly limited in other things we can do, as we've, you know, talked about for a while.
I'm sorry, Laura, is there any difference, or Gideon, between the two funds in terms of the strings that are attached to either of the two funds, the program income or the general affordable housing revenue fund?
I think they're both no strings attached. They're free money. The town is free to spend that money.
And
this is money we've had for quite a long time too. I mean, this hasn't changed, you know, for at least a year.
Just playing around with the numbers, if we were to change that to about 175,000, if you assume $1,000 a unit for 3 months plus the $450 fee, that would allow us to assist about 50 households. And it seems to me like a good number to start with, and we can reconvene later if the need is there and make adjustments.
I like the idea of tying our number to some rational calculation like that to start. I mean, again, if we don't, if we need to spend more, we can. But I like.
I'm happy to amend my motion to that number if that makes the group happy.
I would second that.
175. I'm taking minutes. 175.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how many cases did you say that would cover with the fee?
Approximately 50 if you assume $1,000 in assistance for 3 months, plus the $450 fee to Metro West.
Thank you.
And I am assuming here that we would ask the organization to administer the funds.
I'm not sure if that question was to me, Cliff.
Well, it's a question. It was an assumption, but I guess we should ask you the question. Would you be willing to administer a program of this sort for Watertown?
Yes, if asked to, we would.
Asked to serve, you will.
Yes.
I'll amend my motion, to include that.
I'll second you.
Can I just ask a quick question, Fred? How quickly can you reconvene? I just think 50 families are are going to come forward fairly quickly. I don't know how many are going to qualify, but I think that's going to happen soon. So I don't know when you can announce the program, when you can physically start the publicity. You have all the details in place from Jen. It's maybe just a formal announcement. But how quickly is it just another meeting of the partnership that said, okay, we're down to $25,000 or we're down to 50,000 and we've been out for 3 weeks and we're already, or been out a month. Is it just a matter of reconvening and voting?
I believe you're correct. That's all we would have to do. The limiting factor, but there'd be two factors limiting it. One, the availability of a quorum, and the availability of the TV station to schedule the meeting. So the answer to your question is fairly quickly. And I think, unless I'm not understanding something, Jen would keep us informed, and the first month she's only doling out $1,000, and then the next month another 1,000. So it's not going to run out of money even if there's more than 50 applicants.
Well, no, it could be 50,000 in the first month and 50,000 in the second month, right? So actually, sorry, this is actually an important consideration. We would propose a period of time for advertising and accepting applications, and then conducting a lottery if necessary, to award the funds to, the winners of the lottery until we run out of money. We might not need the lottery. If we advertise, we think we can serve 50 households, we only get 30 applications, we don't have to do the lottery. But I think we would want to advertise that, applications are due by a certain date. Please get your application in by that date. We could continue to accept applications after that date. But then we would process them and we would target the following month. So let's just, for the sake of the story, it's June 16th. Let's say we try to go live July 1st and we advertise for 2 weeks, and we would conduct the lottery, therefore, around the 3rd week of July. We're probably not going to be able to cut checks August 1st because most people submit incomplete applications, and we spend a lot of time getting the documents that are required. So that would give us the month of August to try to get everybody's applications complete, and probably September 1st would be the first checks. And we would, if we're targeting 50 households, we would target to have 50 checks going out September 1st. The alternative would be first come, first serve, and as people come in and complete their applications, we try to process them as they're coming along. The disadvantage, in my mind, to that path is that not everybody is going to be a native English speaker, and not everyone is going to have the same access to technology. So first come, first serve will benefit English speaking, technologically savvy households.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
So the lottery kind of, balances some of that out. It's still hard for non-English speakers and people without computers and scanners and stuff, but.
I heard two things from I'm taking back two things from what you said. First of all, the money's not going to be leaving the kitty until sometime in the future. So it's not an emergency. We can follow based on your advice to us as to how many applicants you have, and we'll know what's going on, and we can have a meeting in a month and still be ahead of the curve, is what it sounds like to me. And we're putting 175,000 or up to that. And at that point. And the second thing I heard is that, Jen, you're going to give us the language to put on the website that's going to tell people what to do. And then, okay. So it seems to me we're in good shape to do it. And unless I'm missing something, anybody else pick up something else? I mean.
Sounds like Gideon.
Sorry, Fred. I just was calling to listen in, but here I am talking. Sorry about that. My understanding is that what you're doing is creating the allocation to allow the money to be spent by the town and get into a contract with Jen Van Kampen's entity. So you're allocating an amount of money, and then you can recommend, initiating best practices, but the town would obviously be expecting the best practices possible for allocating the money and spending the money for the program.
I believe that's
so.
Correct.
So you're talking about some details that I wouldn't think that you would actually be voting on. What you're really doing is saying we're allocating X amount of dollars, or we're making a recommendation to our department to spend X amount of dollars on this program. And then those details will get worked out as part of the program.
You mean whether we give $950 per 2-bedroom in 3 payments? Is that what you're saying? The town's going to make that assessment?
So that between our consultant and the town, we would have to make that decision. I mean, if you want to say this is what it's going to be exactly, that's fine. But I think that ultimately the contract is between the town, not the housing partnership. So what you're really focused on is this money. And it's good to talk about the details of this and give us guidance. But I just wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same boat as far as making the vote. So if you're saying we're allocating up to X amount of dollars using this fund or that fund, those are the 2 funds you can make recommendations. And then Steve Magoon, the director, would be the person that you would be making that recommendation to. Is that right, Laura? I just wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page. And I think
so, but I think we can make a recommendation with respect to like not the town can adopt something else, but the recommendation could include the bedroom allocation as well as the area median income cutoffs. In other words, we could say 65, vote to say 65%, and the town could say we want to include it up to 80% or whatever. I don't think we need to get into the minutia of the agreement between the town and Jen or whatever, that kind of stuff. But those basic recommendations about the program, I think it's fair to make a couple of recommendations about that, don't you? You didn't?
I think you're both on the same page. You're making a recommendation. We're allocating money and we're making a recommendation on how it to be spent.
Yeah, I would not be comfortable not providing some more guidance, frankly, and just saying here's $175,000. I think that would be not a reasonable thing to do. One more question in regard to process. Is this an appropriation the town council will need to vote on as well?
I think so.
We have to confirm with Steve, right, Laura?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure whether it needs to go through council or not.
I know your recommendation
goes to the manager.
That's one of those things, Steve was out for a good bit of time because he was sick, so we didn't ever finish vetting the whole process. So we will do that.
Yeah, well, that would be a staff function anyway.
Right.
Are we comfortable voting an amount to start with and then kind of backing into the details, or?
With a recommendation of what the details are, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you want to get out as much as you can right now because we don't want to have to do this again in 2 weeks. Better to give us guidance to what you'd like, what you would like, and then we'll make it happen.
Okay.
Maybe we should do 2 motions.
I think we had
the details of the program.
I don't know, Fred, was there a motion and
The
was it
motion
seconded?
was, it's my understanding, 175,000 out of the general affordable housing revenue, and up to that amount with the program that's described actually on the memo, which is the 3 payments with the 2-bedroom unit at $950.
That's accurate. That's my motion.
Yeah,
One more
I mean,
detail from earlier.
that's our allocation and our recommendation as to how it should be spent.
Jen, do you always do 3 payments in general?
Yes, that has been the practice.
I'm
not
sorry,
sure.
what's the 3 payments or 1 individual payment? I'm not
3
catching.
months. I meant 3 months worth of
3
payments.
months.
You always do 3 months worth of payments.
In the 1 check?
No. Right? No, she told us before, 1 month at a time.
Right.
Oh, you do it 1 month at a time? And if someone's already 3 months in arrears, you wouldn't write them a check for?
Oh, so that's a good question. Some communities have decided not to pay arrears. I'm a landlord, and I don't care if your money's going forward or going past. So I think it's a little bit arbitrary, but
punitive.
We could pay arrears. You know, if people come in and say I'm 3 months behind, we could go backwards. I'm not sure it matters really to the landlord.
Could we keep it simple and not worry about that? We're just going to pay $1,000 and the landlord's going to get a check and he can credit it wherever he wants to.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to work like that, is it? Are the checks actually paid to the landlord? They don't have a memo section that says this is September, August, November. They're just saying.
Well, that's what our check will say, but Fred is correct that the landlord will put it wherever they want to.
Pay the landlord if they evict the tenant.
Right.
Well, we don't, but it will be a process of negotiation. And what Jen's point sounds like it might actually have more leverage, sort of go with the going forward notion of it.
Yeah.
But it will be a negotiation still with landlords, and I think it's yet to sort itself out as to how these, because it's such a cascading effect between landlords, tenants, and everybody else.
Can we get
I
back
think
to-
we should avoid any undue complication in what we recommend. We're recommending up to 135,000 that goes out as 3 checks, and it's forward money. So landlord is not going to evict the tenant unless it's a terrible landlord, and I don't know where he's going to get another tenant.
We have one more, we've got one more consideration, one more detail that we discussed earlier, which is that we wanted to exclude households that are already receiving housing assistance. So I think that would need to go into the motion as well.
Yes, you're correct.
And we get the 80% area median income, or do we want to drop it any? Are we good with that? Is that your recommendation, Jen? Keeping it at the 80%?
Yeah. But
all right, does Dory need?
I would amend my motion to
include the
80%.
I would amend my motion. I think,
and also that. Cliff's part about the.
I think we let Tori speak so we can amend the motion.
Yeah, no, I'd amend the motion to what Cliff just mentioned for sure.
Okay.
And one last thing, I'm sorry, can we take it out of the CDBG program account rather than the general affordable? Or is it make a difference?
Fine with me.
They're both strings. There are no strings on either account.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah.
Again, I'd amend my motion, but I defer to staff on that. I don't know enough about either account to understand the difference between the two. So,
honestly, I don't know if it matters for you to make that in your motion.
Legally it doesn't, but appearance-wise, CDBG money is intended to be used for low and moderate income households, whereas the other, even if that's not a string that's technically attached right now, whereas the general funds could be used in any way that we thought appropriate. So I think it would be a good idea to start by using the CDBG money if possible.
I do want to clarify that those are not CDBG funds. They're the town's match that got returned to us.
CDBG program income. Okay.
It's not program income from CDBG.
But that is the way Steve wrote it to me in an email.
Okay, maybe I thought we did, it's been around a long time, and I thought we did research, and it ended up being that the actual money that we have left was the money that the town used.
It was the matching fund. It was our contribution, you mean, Gideon, yeah.
That's the name of the account. Whatever the money came from, that's what the account is called.
Whatever the account is called, it still says CDBG, and CDBG
program income.
Even if the money is not federal in origin, CDBG is intended to be used for low and moderate income households. So I think it would be a wise place to start. For appearance purposes.
I think if it doesn't make all things being equal, then let's use that fund first.
Which one? I'm sorry, you got garbled.
Use the one that Cliff's suggesting, the so-called CDBG program income account.
Yeah, so you're agreeing with Cliff?
Yes.
I think Cliff's agreeing with David, but be that as it may.
As long as we're agreeing.
Or could you help us all and read back?
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, I don't have it in a neat, orderly way. I have it in the way we discussed it. So,
thank goodness you have it.
A motion to allocate $175,000 from the CDBG program income account for a program, rental assistance program that would pay $750 for a 1-bedroom, $950 for a 2-bedroom, up to 3 months worth or up to 3 payments, including the fee, run by Metro West Community Development, Collaborative Development, Community Development. Please get that wrong.
There's also a payment for a 3-bedroom unit.
Okay, and how much is
that? Too.
How much is a 3-bedroom? $1150. Okay, and also to be set at 80% of median income eligibility. Set at. I'll write in the minutes a little better than that.
I mean, just to simplify matters, let the town staff determine which account it comes from. I don't see a difference in the accounts, but if there's something,
based on Cliff's reasoning, I'd rather, unless the town wants to come back and say they have a preference, let this be our recommendation and let them come back.
It's fine to just keep it as CDBG.
Okay. Gotcha. Any more discussion?
No.
No.
We have a second on it.
All
in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think that's 3. Opposed?
Aye.
3, 4, 1 opposed.
Who was opposed?
No, I was not opposed. I was voting and I didn't think you heard me the first time.
Okay.
Just a reminder,
Okay.
Because you're online, you have to do a roll call vote.
Okay.
And it's important for this one especially.
Sure. Okay. Do a roll call. David.
Aye. Yes.
Tori.
Aye.
Ellen.
Yes.
I think that's it.
And Cliff.
Me, yes.
Cliff.
Cliff.
Yes.
Okay. So it is approved.
Nice job.
Thank you, Laura and Jen and Gideon.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And you're going to keep us informed as to where we are and give us what it takes to put it on the website? Laura, you're going to put it on the website?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things that have to happen before that, but once we have some materials, we will see that it gets posted. And hopefully we'll do a little better than that. We'll definitely send it over to the Wayside, to our human services coordinator.
Okay. The other part of this, of course, is to promote it. And Tony, you have a meeting upcoming, and you know, whatever you can do is great.
Well, I would hope that someone from the from the partnership, the more the merrier, could come and just reiterate the proposal. And I know Jen is going to come to the meeting, and so would be the folks from the social service resource specialist will be there. But it'd be nice if someone from the partnership plugged in there just to say, this is what we voted on, and a little bit of a timeline when you think it's all gonna, well, Jen could do that too, when it's all gonna unroll. Yeah, but definitely gonna push it, yeah.
We've done our part. I mean, it's gonna unroll as the staff processes.
Okay, so the staff is gonna be there anyway, so they can talk about that.
And certainly we're all invited, and I will certainly try to be there. The rest of us certainly, hopefully, will be there as well.
Tony, do you want to just tell everybody when the meeting is?
Yes, I'm sorry. It's on Monday, the 22nd at 7:30. And I think some of you, well, I know that Laura's going to get it out to everybody, but the link is in there already, just like this kind of meeting, except it's going to be, I think, a little bigger, and we'll have to very carefully follow the rules about voting and so forth. But 22nd, 7:30, Monday the 22nd at 7:30 through Zoom.
Tony, wouldn't that be Marilyn who would do that? Would Marilyn put it out?
I think she sent you
It's already been sent.
It was not clear to me that I was supposed to send that.
I think she asked you to send it to this body.
Yes, which I did.
We did receive it. We did receive it.
That's all. And then I believe Lodia was asked to send it to her body of people.
Okay. So has everyone received it, or shall I do that again? I'd be happy to send it again.
Why don't
Bad idea.
Yes, please send it again. Please send it again.
I will do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the other item we have is new business, if there is anything.
Is there anything to report on the development side? I'm assuming things have been pretty quiet.
Could you speak up, please?
Is there anything to report in terms of new development?
There's no housing development that's been proposed, but several of the projects are moving forward. You probably are aware if you've driven around town. Arsenal Yards, 330 Pleasant Street and 385 Pleasant Street are all under construction, and so those projects, including their affordable units, will be coming online over time.
Jen, anything new on your end? No?
May I just ask a quick question about the housing plan, the production plan? Is that still something that the partnership is working on? I know you don't need it for
Right.
40B. We don't need it for 40B, but I just wonder whether that.
The problem is it's held up for staff review.
Okay.
Before we distribute it. That has to happen.
That can help with facilitating the housing planning side.
I don't know. I didn't catch that. You were breaking up on my end.
Yeah.
No, we can't hear you.
You're not coming in clearly.
Yeah, you sound like something out of Star Wars right now. Well, with our last
facilitate.
Oh,
my goodness.
what he might be saying is that we're in the process of hiring a senior planner who will do the housing plan. Hoping that will happen fairly soon.
We've been hoping for that for a long time.
Tony, it's worth noting that our last meeting before the pandemic was devoted to discussing the housing production plan.
I was just wondering, when I was working on the minutes for February, there wasn't a March meeting, is that right?
No, it was COVID canceled just before the March
COVID
meeting.
canceled. Canceled by COVID. Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the minutes, we have basically a summary of what the list is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all in staff hands.
I don't know about that, but anyway, all right. Well, everyone be well, stay safe.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned.
Ah.
I know.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.